In my opinion, redemption isn't something that is given, it's something that is earned, right? And if you know anything about me, you know that I am a huge Star Wars fan. And while rewatching episode 3, and honestly, while rewatching the entire first 6 episodes, I started to notice a trend, right? Anakin Skywalker's redemption arc wasn't necessarily a redemption arc, right? Sure, Star Wars ends and Darth Vader's throwing Palpatine over the edge and saving Luke Skywalker, and the glory goes to Anakin as he turns into a Force ghost and is forever memorialized in the form of a Force ghost, right? But why do we feel that was a happy ending, right? Anakin's story is not one of redemption. Anakin's story is actually truly a story of tragedy that fell into the ending of a redemption. Anakin's story follows the ideal basic guideline for a redemption arc nowadays, right? You start good, you start neutral, you start wherever, you do something insanely evil. And in Anakin's case, this was turning into Lord Vader. This was slaughtering the younglings at the temple. This was fighting Obi-Wan and killing Padme. In a sense, this was a tragedy. So why do so many people look at it like redemption? Why do so many people see that just because you do something good in the finale, that suddenly you're considered a good guy? Suddenly, all of the wrong that you spent years, decades even, committing atrocities and foul work suddenly make you a good guy because you ended your life on a good note? You ended your life with something that people can look back on and be like, oh, hey, Anakin wasn't that bad of a guy. It's kind of like the whole thing that just because you were bad and you flip a page, suddenly you're good now. I think that's a big load of BS. Now, don't get me wrong, Anakin's story is one of my favorites of all time. Anakin spends a very long time in a very dark place and gets almost gaslit into becoming Darth Vader, right? It starts with the tale of Darth Plagueis the Wise, the tragedy of Darth Plagueis the Wise, right? And Anakin starts there, not realizing that he's falling into his own tragedy. He was found as a young boy, as most of you know the Star Wars story, picked up, raised in the Jedi ways, became this awesome person during the Clone Wars, and suddenly gets manipulated into being Lord Vader, into believing the lies of the dark side. And yes, in my opinion, they are lies. I'm Team Obi-Wan all day long. I'm glad he won that fight. It is so satisfying to know that while Obi-Wan did have flaws, he was the better person, and the Master prevailed in the end. But that's not what I'm here to talk about. I'm here to talk about redemption, right? In the last moments of Anakin's life is the only moment of redemption, right? As he throws Palpatine over and saves his son, that is it. That is the only moment of redemption. Before that, Darth Vader, or Lord Vader, spent years causing terror and reigning with an iron fist over the empire he was given. He didn't care who he hurt. He didn't care what he had to do to get what he wanted. He did it anyways. He moved through planets at some cases. He was totally the definition of a bad guy. And I'm not here to hate him for it. I'm just here to question his redemption arc, right? Because if you look at somebody like Zuko from Avatar: The Last Airbender, I know, a crazy pull from out of thin air, you see that Zuko in Showtime spent months, years even, trying to make up for the fact that he was a bad person originally. And the show ends with him, becoming good. But Star Wars kind of sheds a different light. As I've already kind of explained, it goes into this idea that just because someone did something good before they died, suddenly they're a hero to be proclaimed. I don't look at it that way. I don't look at the fact that Anakin never apologized. Anakin never had to face anyone that he hurt. Anakin never had to change because he simply didn't want to. Whereas if you look at Zuko and his true redemption arc, you see the never-ending tale of something beautiful, of something that in the beginning you almost never expected to happen, but it happened anyways. And I never saw what Darth Vader did coming my first watch through of Star Wars, but it's very obvious that that's kind of what it's building towards. Whereas with Avatar The Last Airbender, you never realize in the early days that Zuko is going to eventually try and redeem himself. So why does redemption often get this whole idea that you have to do a lot before you are considered redeemed? In my head, that is the right way to do it, but for a lot of people, they look at Anakin and they say, yeah, he redeemed himself. Yeah, his actions against Palpatine in that final fight redeemed himself. But for me, that's not the case. Right? Anakin's story is a tragedy. Anakin turning into Lord Vader and soon to become Darth Vader is a bad thing. He was never a good person, yet a lot of people credit him with being so good that in fact he got a Force ghost. So that begs the question in my head, truly, how does one become redeemed? Do you get the chance like Anakin does, where in the last 10 seconds of his life he decides that he's a good person again? Or do you have to go through the mental and personal struggle that Zuko went through just to be good, just to be redeemed, just to be viewed in a different light? Personally, I would say that I would have to take the road of Zuko. Again, nothing against Anakin or Darth Vader, but to me, it isn't a true redemption arc. Hell, in my opinion, Ice King had a better redemption arc than Anakin did. Anakin truly never stopped until the very last second. He never wanted to become good. He never had that drive, right? There was no growth over time. There was no accountability. There was no internal nor external change. There was none of that. He didn't rebuild relationships at all, actually. He ended up forcing Obi-Wan to go into hiding because he had become the most powerful Sith Lord in existence at that point. He didn't face any consequences. Because at the end, he was still, quote unquote, redeemed. And to me, that isn't right in a sense. There's so many different ways that this can be interpreted, right? Redemption arcs to me and to a lot of people require depth. And Anakin's didn't have depth. Anakin's redemption arc was very lackluster. Wasn't built like some of the stories we see nowadays, like some of the stories modern audiences expect. And to a certain degree, Anakin missed out on quite a bit. To me, Anakin doesn't do half the things he did if Palpatine was never involved in the beginning. To me, Anakin becomes a good hero, a legendary Jedi, if Palpatine was never involved. So it kind of also begs the question that just because you were mistreated and misled by someone you trusted, does that make you evil? Or does that make you misunderstood? And there's so many different ways to truly go about this, but I would say that would be for the next episode. If you've made it this far, I want you to truly think about your favorite redemption arc. I want you to compare it to that of Anakin's. Right? For me, Zuko is one of my favorite redemption arcs of all time. He started off as the guy who could not rest until the Avatar was his prisoner. And then he ended up becoming friends with Avatar at the end of the show, right? I'm not trying to spoil it too much, right? I'm not trying to, ruin Avatar for you, because it's a great show and I think everyone should watch it at least once. But to me, Anakin and Zuko had two completely different redemption arcs. Zuko had a well-built, well-honored, well-oiled, one would say, redemption arc. And Anakin Skywalker had a cheap impersonation of one. Thank you for watching. Please like, subscribe, and comment down below. I'm Kevin, and this is my show. And this has been The Kevin Show. Deuces. Next episode of The Kevin Show. Deuces.